Hello survivors, welcome to my first voiced art video. I will be going through my art process for one of the flags I made from my recent mod release for Fallout 4 Sim Settlements, Factionpack Wastelanders. If you haven't checked it out yet, link is below. I'm going to start off slow, just to explain a few things, then I'll be speeding up the artwork 1,000 times, otherwise we'll be here all day. This is pretty much how I start most of my art. A few simple shapes, some ovals and lines to help plan out the direction I plan to go with the artwork, as well as the physical space and direction the artwork will flow in. By this point, I have done a number of preliminary sketches in my sketchbook. For the sake of time, I've skipped over that, and we're going to go right into the digital sketch. Now that the sketch is done, I lowered the transparency and kind of push it to the background and make a new layer on top of it. That's going to be my inking layer, and I'm going to start to flesh out the final line work for the piece on top of that. This will also be where I kind of build up the texture and the shadows and overall look of the rough surfaces of the piece. I approach this entire piece from the perspective of the type of flag the character from my Scaver series of magazines for Industrial Revolution would have. So I really wanted to go with the gas mask theme. And I also wanted it to be kind of rough looking, bumpy, worn, kind of old. It's seen some stuff. I did that with the way that I built up the texture and the scratches of the overall mask. Once I got into the eye sockets, I wanted the reflection to kind of come out, which meant that I filled in the socket and then scratched out the reverse, like the negative of the texture. Once I got one side of the mask done, I just kind of flipped it over to give it symmetry and to bring both sides together so that they kind of felt like something that was produced. Since this is something that has been cobbled together and fixed over a period of time, I brought the stitching in and kind of built it up through the front of the mask. For the most part now, I have the general shape of the mask done. Now it's just some final tweaks and kind of adding my own flair and touch to the edges and my style that I've kind of developed over a period of time. And I also wanted to bring in the tier. Not necessarily a tier because that would mean that the suit was compromised. It's more like something had built up on the outside of the suit while in the wastes and it was leaking off. But it gives the emphasis of the tier, which I thought was cool. So I left it there. Now I'm moving on to the banner, which goes around the top of the piece. And this is where the Wastelanders title will go. I wanted to give this kind of a bumpy scroll-like texture to it. And I'm also going to flip this so that it's fairly similar on both sides. So once I'm done with that, that's where we go. The cross-hatching and texture work it kind of gives interest to the piece, and it kind of builds up the depth, and it's like something that I've kind of done in a lot of my artwork over a period of time. So it's just kind of like my style, sketchy scratchy look. I used to do a lot of pen and ink, so it really kind of came from that. Now that I flipped the other side over, I got to kind of change it so that it's not the same. So I kind of removed that scuzz and dripping stuff that I have on the other, like the paper had been torn and was worn away. And I add some of that in to the other side in different places just to give it a unique side, to change it up from the other. Now I go through and give some interest and some worn texture to various pieces. It's not planned out. It's just something that I feel like, oh, this needs to go here, or this needs to go there, and it kind of fleshes out the interesting parts of the artwork. I inked out the bombs. I wasn't sure when I first started doing this what I was going to do with those, but I had kind of a since 2077 type idea for it. If I end up doing t-shirts, it will definitely go in there. I'm not sure if I'm going to leave it in the final flag or not, but it's part of that. Now that I got the general inking done and the texturing done, I'm going to start doing some grayscale work. And I'm eventually going to turn that into like a halftone pattern because, like I said, I'm thinking t-shirt in the future, but it also will look good on the flag in-game. So I'm going to make it that way. I further build up the depth and texture with the gray work, and it kind of will bring out the parts that are closer to you and then push away the parts that are supposed to be recessed. And I also use this for adding more of a texture to the banner and also the mask in general, just to give it kind of a bumpy appearance for the most part. Now that the general gray work is done, I'm experimenting with the halftone patterns until I get something that I like. And for the most part, I have no specific look that I'm going for. It's just, does it look good to me? Does it not look good to me? And that's pretty much it. I kind of like that, so I think that, yeah, that's where I stopped. Now I'm going to bring in the Wastelanders actual title. I got to this brushy script, which is it's not what's in the flag in the game at the moment, but at the time of this recording, I liked it, so that's what I went with. Now I'm adding some splatter and some inking look to the overall banner. I'll mask out the stuff that comes off the edges, and then I go back through and erase the parts that are making letters not identifiable, just to keep it so that you can still read it from a distance, but it's still covered in splatters and ink. which makes it look like someone hand drew it for the most part. All right, now that I'm done with that, I'm going to open up the template file for the Fallout 4 flags. I have one set up already that has a lot of textures in it, and I'm going to bring this in so that I can reproduce it with smart layers, and then I will bring it into the game with a DDS file. Just adding some more textures, and we're pretty much done. That wasn't too hard. And there you go, the Wastelanders flag. If you're still here, thank you for sticking around. It was a long process. It actually ran over a couple hours. If I hadn't sped it up to 1,000%, we wouldn't even be done with the sketch. So, also, I'd like to thank my current and new followers. If you're not following, throw me a subscribe. For more modded Fallout 4 content and artwork videos, let me know what you think about my mod work and artwork. I appreciate it. Until next time, later.